congregation, and welcome back to the parenting series of the Unveiled podcast. I'm super excited for you to meet our guest today, so let's get started. Welcome to the Unveiled podcast. All right, congregation, today I have the privilege of sitting with Amanda Collins. You have probably heard her name before, her and Dan's and their families, because they are a big part of this church. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Of course. Glad to be here.
I would love to know and start out if you would tell us a little bit about your family and y'all's time here at FUMC New Braunfels.
Oh, gosh. Let's see. We've been coming to FUMC for since about 2000, right in there.
Wow.
I started when I was pregnant with Kaylee. I started coming to MOPS. Met several women through our preschool that we were starting to get involved with, and so they invited me to come to MOPS. So came, enjoyed the company of the other moms, and they invited me to church, so decided to try it out. We had kind of been visiting different churches, and we got married at First Protestant, Protestant church, and so that wasn't a good fit for us.
Right.
And we were starting our family. You know, we had Shelby already, and we were just looking for a place to be at home, and we just didn't feel that way there. So we shopped around a little bit. We actually visited before I started coming to MOPS here.
Did your kids go to the Methodist day school, or?
No, they went to a little private preschool, and several of the moms there were members here at church.
Oh, very cool.
So I knew, got to know a couple of people ahead of time, so that made it a little bit easier to start coming.
Cool. Yeah, the MOPS, it used to be really, really big here.
Yeah.
So, so you've said you had Shelby and Kaylee. How many kids do you have?
We have 4 total. We have Shelby, who's 25, Kaylee just turned 23, Trent's 20, and then we had a caboose, which is Gavin, who's 14.
I love that, a caboose.
Yeah. Don't say you're done with your family. That's what happens.
So it's very obvious that you raised your kids in church and that you and Dan have servant hearts. Was that something that you had always planned to do, or did it just happen organically?
No, not planned. I guess when we had Shelby, we started kind of feeling like we really needed to try to work on our spiritual lives.
Right.
Dan and I were pretty much unchurched growing up. I had a little bit here and there through my grandmother, but nothing regular. My parents don't really attend church regularly. I mean, they'll come, but they don't attend regularly. So it wasn't a big part of my life growing up. And so we just decided, and Dan was unchurched also, and so we just decided that's something that we wanted to have for our kids. So we started coming to church, and we started coming to traditional service originally, and then we kind of morphed into contemporary. So
I have a lot to say about that, actually, because it's very interesting that you are on the podcast this week. I'm preaching this week, and I'm preaching about the Millennial Generation because that's the generation that I was born into, and you are kind of rare because, for the most part, my generation, I think it's like 37%. I didn't actually put that in the sermon, but I want to say it's 37% of millennials go to church. There's a little bit more with Gen X and way more with baby boomer. But there's not a whole lot of people who didn't really go to church as a kid, like regularly, who decided, okay, we're going to go to church. But those who have done that, once they have gotten married and have kids, it's like a switch goes off.
Yeah,
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. That was just the time that it really started becoming like us wanting to focus on what we wanted our family to be.
Right.
And not wanting our family to grow up like we did. Kind of wondering about church and maybe going here and there.
Right.
And just not having that basis, not having that home base.
Right.
We moved around a lot when I was a kid within Houston, and because that's where I'm from. Dan is from McQueenie, and he grew up from day one there and never left until it went to college. So I always wanted that. For my family, I wanted us to have that home base. So that's really kind of where that started, where that inkling started.
Yeah.
And, you have kids, you start thinking a lot more about the world and
Oh, 100%.
You
You
know.
think about things you never thought about in your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that was really kind of where we decided to make that difference.
I think that is so cool. I think that's really so cool. And I love the way you talk about a home base because it's easy to have that home base, but to add church into that home base can be a little bit harder. So I think it's really awesome that y'all decided for yourself and for your kids to start them off as church in that home base.
Absolutely.
So that is really,
yeah,
really
they
neat.
grew up here, and that's just what it is.
It's like home.
So,
Church is like home for them
It
too.
is. It is. It is.
Just bragging on our church a little bit, that we do a pretty good job of making sure that when people come in the door that they feel welcomed. And I think that's something that is great and that we should continue.
Oh, absolutely. And he is totally better than that, and better at that than I am.
Is he a host?
I mean, he's a host. Yeah, he's a host.
That's what I thought.
He'll talk to people, I'm always like, oh, I don't know if they've been here. So I don't want to look like a dum-dum, telling them,
Right.
hi, how are you doing? Well, we've been here
Here's
for
the
a year.
bathroom.
Yeah. And he's like, he doesn't care. He's like, he introduces himself and has conversation, but that's his personality too.
Yes.
So he's pretty easy to talk to.
Yeah.
But he's better at that than I am now. So
Well, I would never be able to tell that you think that he's better at that than you.
Oh,
I think you're both really great about welcoming people. And we'll get a little bit, I want to talk what y'all's like big where your heart is. Because if you don't know, they've got a really awesome project that they continuously do in this church. But we haven't really talked about it. Can you tell, I'm throwing you for a loop here.
Mhm.
I'm going to take a
That's
step
all right.
real fast. But I want to ask you a little bit about what you and Dan do. Because I have heard, but I've never actually talked to you about it, but you both work with kids, don't you?
We do, yes. I have been a school nurse. Well, I've been a nurse for 30 years, but in all those different roles. But I worked at the high school at Canyon High School I'm going into my 12th year.
Yeah.
And I love my job. Love the high schoolers most days. Some days are a little bit hard, but in all their teenage glory. And then Dan has been in juvenile services for his whole career since he got out of college. And he worked his way through the ranks in juvenile services, and he runs the Comal County Juvenile Department now.
Wow.
Here in town. He's been there a few years now. So we both love our jobs, and we love being a part of our community. Where we work where we live, and we enjoy that a lot. Just having that home base. We've drug them along on all kinds of things. They've been here. They've all been here their whole lives. But I was always a person that I always carried my babies around on me. I baby wore everybody, and so that's a lot of people will say, oh yeah, I remember Trent being in the sling.
Oh my gosh.
Being in BBS, and because they were always had them slung up. But
so you really
I baby wore all my kiddos. So they were eye level, with everything that was usually going on. And it's just stepping into a lot of different roles and seeing what's stuck.
Yeah.
Is really I have the title of the kitchen lady. So people will still call me that, just because I was always in the kitchen. I love to cook, so that's a role that I always took on. And so they were in the kitchen with me and shopping at Sam's for VBS, and they saw it. Yeah, they saw it. So they don't think twice about doing something volunteer wise. Well, they're older now, so maybe they do think twice about it a little bit, but they just think it's normal,
right?
To serve.
Yeah.
So we might not have done a lot of other things right, but I feel like we did that right. So.
Yeah, absolutely, because that I think is one of the most important things. Being in church is realizing that it's not just about the people that you are sitting next to in a pew. There's other people outside of our doors, and we take care of the people that are in our pew and those that are in our church, but how awesome when we can teach our kids to take care of those that are outside of our church, outside of our comfort zone.
Absolutely.
Because it's not easy.
No, it's not
easy.
It's not. But I think you do the things that come naturally to you. And I think that that's where people shine.
So we've talked obviously about how you show that to your children and how you encourage that. But if, let's say you're talking to somebody who wants badly for their children to be volunteering and they want to encourage that servant heart in them, what is like your best advice for them? You've kind of already said like you want to figure out where they shine, but
yeah, figure out what their strengths are is important. But before that is modeling it. So do it yourself. I think that's the most important thing, because if you're not willing to do it, they're not going to do. Yeah, exactly. So whether you're going to buy groceries for VBS, or you're running the kitchen, or you're a group leader, or whatever it is, I think that you have to get outside of your comfort zone and try something that, just because that you're modeling for your child, even if you're uncomfortable with it,
right,
or feel like you don't know what you're doing, you've got to step outside your comfort zone to get them to be able to see that,
right,
they can do things that they might not be comfortable with right at that moment, but once they do it, then okay, I can do it again, or I can do this other thing. I think that's probably the most important thing, because if they don't see you stepping up, they're not going to step up.
Right.
They're not going to step up or out. So
yeah, can you off the top of your head think of something that you watched one of your children do and you thought, oh wow, like that, something that was obviously of their own servant heart that just really made you proud to see them do that? I'm sure there are lots of moments.
Gosh,
I'm putting you on the spot.
We didn't touch on Texas Ramps project at all, because we're gonna talk a little bit about Family Promise,
yes.
But since 2008, Dan has been leading our group here at FUMC for Texas Ramps project.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah,
wow.
And so that team is phenomenal, and my kids love to build ramps. So they have grown up through, Texas Ramp, coming along, running a drill or just helping out, moving things around, to this point where Shelby and Kaylee and Trent could do a ramp project without Dan. They've done it so many times. And when Shelby comes to help as an adult now, people are looking at her for guidance. What do I do? And she's telling people, and I'm like, I've been doing ramps as long as she has, and I still can't do that. I'm like, here's my drill. I can drill screws. That's what I do. I can move stuff around.
Right.
But I'm not the person going, well, we need to do it this way, or we need to do it that way. I'm just, tell me what to do. And she's just, picked that up through all the different jobs done. To see them be able to lead now is crazy to me. It's amazing.
That is really
And
awesome.
Trent talked about he's in the Army, and he's on base right now, and he talked about getting a group together there to do ramps and that in Killeen. And so that hasn't happened yet, but he was like, yeah, I think we could do that, So I'm like, okay, now they're taking those skills and they're going out into other communities and doing work. So
wow,
to think that they have the confidence to do that.
And that's not something you're pushing them to do. Yeah.
No. And I wouldn't have the confidence to do that. No, definitely not.
Wow.
But yeah, that's probably, that's just probably the most amazing thing that, and none of them knew how to build anything, growing up. They just see all of the different times that we've served, and all the different ways that ramps are put together, and all that customization that happens on site and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's pretty amazing to me.
Yeah, talk about, first of all, being in the Army, that's an ultimate servant heart.
He's doing great. So
yeah, and then to think, okay, I'm gonna do what I was taught as a kid, and I'm going to show my starving heart here and start this ramp project for the people in my community because I'm no longer where I used to be. That is really amazing.
Perpetuate it, for sure. So.
You have to be super proud.
Well, hopefully it gets done. We have to. I have to remind him. You were talking about doing that ramp.
Oh, but that is so cool.
Yeah. So that's probably the most amazing thing. I mean, they all amaze me, and they all have different gifts and talents. But, to see them through the years do different stuff, Yeah. Amazing.
Well, you talked a little bit about Family Promise. So when I think of Family Promise, I think of your family because y'all are like such a huge part of it.
Yeah.
So a couple things. Tell me a little bit about how y'all got started in it. Was it a thing before and y'all just kind of stepped foot and like, oh yeah, we're going to try this out? Or were you kind of on the ground floor when it became a thing?
So we started, originally there were a couple other church members that were the Leals that ran Family Promise in its first, I want to say year and a half. And then it just wasn't a real good fit for them anymore. And we had been volunteering with Family Promise because it's a really great ministry because it's not one of those constant ministries. And so I feel like you don't get burnout because we do it when we're on a normal rotation, we do it every few months. And so you can serve, but you don't feel overwhelmed by it. So was a good fit for us as a ministry just because we had little kids at the time, and so it wasn't that constant thing.
Yeah.
And so I think that's helped us have this longevity just because it is more intermittent.
Right.
But when we serve, it's very impactful.
Right.
So I just have a heart for it. Dan does too. Not that we don't want to retire from it someday. So if anybody's
looking,
we've been putting that out there. Just gotta kind of if there's anybody, because I don't want to feel like somebody else can't do it better than we can.
Right.
For sure. So I would love to have somebody come alongside us and shadow us, and especially with the kind of revamp that Family Promise is going through right now. So, lots of changes have been made recently. So,
well, can you tell? So, for someone who doesn't know what Family Promise is, can you explain a little bit about what is Family Promise?
So, Family Promise is a national organization that's been in existence for a long, long time throughout the United States. The model is that we're trying to equip people to learn the skills that they need to learn to live a healthy life and to be self-sufficient, but to help them along that journey.
Right.
We all know that we come from different backgrounds and different challenges and that kind of thing. So, but it fills kind of this niche place in homelessness where we're trying to keep family units intact. Because in this area and in lots of other areas, there are men's shelters, there are women's shelters, but there's a lot of times it's either the man's over here and the woman's over here with the kids, or vice versa. Right. And you're not able to house those family. If there's a family unit, you're not able to house them all together if it's a mom and a dad and kids, or a dad and kids. That's hard too. So it fills that gap. And it also, it provides for the guests all the things that they need to be successful, and also the support systems that they need to put in place to be able to continue to be successful after they're out of the program.
Right.
And meet them where they are. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah. So
that's really wonderful.
So that's what we do. We house them here at church overnight. We feed them, we fellowship with them, and provide for some needs that come up along the way. And during the daytime, they go to the day center.
Okay.
Or they go to work if they're working, or if they're looking for work, they're at the day center and they're able to get those needs met of being able to get help with applications and
Oh, very nice. Yeah.
and if it's somebody who doesn't have documentation that they need, they help them get all of that, driver's licenses and those kinds of things, or get into training programs,
Right.
or get counseling services, because that's a huge part of the need in a homeless community is mental health services. So, which I'm also very passionate about. But
Yes.
so
Well, I think that is a really amazing program, because I never even thought about the fact that if you've got a family unit, they're going to be split up most of the time. And if you do
Yeah.
have a dad and kids, what happens then?
right.
So that is just a really amazing thought. A lot of thought that was put into Family
Yeah.
Promise, and I didn't realize it was national either.
It is national, and it's a prescriptive program, and so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We're
Yeah.
following a model,
That's great.
and it's the same across the United States. I mean, it can be a different mix of churches in every community, different faiths. The faith community comes together
Right.
and provides for the needs of the guests.
So when a family comes to our church, or families come to our church, obviously we have lots of ways that people can help out. And what are some of those ways off the top of your head that someone can help out? And even, families, you've got people who are wanting to show
Yeah.
their kids.
This is a great program for that because kids are always welcome. We have everything for, we have some people that give monetarily to Family Promise on a regular basis. We have supplies that need to be bought periodically and linens and those kinds of things that we need to redo.
Right.
So there might be that. It might be coming up when we have a rotation and helping to set up the bedrooms, because we use our Sunday school rooms. We kind of reformat those and turn them into bedrooms. That's their space for the week. And so we're able to, drag everything out and set up beds and make it homey for them.
Yep.
While they're here. It may be cleaning out the kitchen, getting the kitchen prepped and ready, or bathrooms getting cleaned up, tables getting set up, all those kinds of things. But again, it's for the week.
Right.
So it's not that we're going to do this for 6 weeks at a time.
Right.
It's a 7-day period.
So if you're making a meal, you
Yeah.
bring up the meal, bring up your kids, and then the Family Promise has got some kids that are there.
Absolutely.
How cool.
And just make conversation.
Yeah.
You don't even have to talk about, we don't want you to talk about the hard stuff. Like, we don't want you asking lots of intrusive questions. We want you just to come and have a meal just like you're having a meal with a friend. Let the kids play and that kind of thing. Model good behavior, parenting behavior and that kind of thing, because that's important. A lot of these families struggle with those kinds of things. And so just being a good model, a good role model for them while they're here. It's just easy. Yeah. And I think it's scary to think I have to go talk to this person who doesn't have a home.
Right.
What do I talk about? When am I going to say something wrong? No, they just want to have a conversation just like anybody else does with a friend, It might be staying over. This is one of our spots that people can serve that's so easy and everybody's so scared of it, is the overnight hosting. So we ask people to come up. We try to have 2, but sometimes it ends up being one person who is part of the church, knows the church a little bit, who can just be the person here overnight. So you literally come up here and eat dinner and go to bed. And if something comes up during the night, somebody needs something, somebody gets sick, that kind of thing, and Dan and I are on standby. If something big happens, somebody gets sick and needs to go to the hospital, we're up here in 5 minutes. Yeah. But it's just an easy thing to do. Come up here and sleep in a little comfy bed and read a book for a while, and you've served. Yeah. But it's one of those spots that is hard. Yeah, everybody's like, I don't know what to do. You don't really need to know anything. As long as you know where the exits are and the kitchen is and the bathrooms are, then, you're good. We don't want to ever have anything terribly traumatic happen. Somebody might have a question about this or that. But It's just an easy spot. So there's lots of little areas that you don't need to feel like you're overwhelmed by, because it's just the normal stuff. It's
Right.
the normal daily living stuff, you
Mhm.
know? So yeah, you're just the person that is the representative of the church for the
Mhm.
night, and just keeping things safe,
Right.
and making sure that all is well. And if something happens to come up, it's we're a phone call away. So,
Right.
yeah, it's easy, but it's one of those things that, and you can bring your kids.
Yeah.
Like we've had full families come and stay as hosts.
Oh, how cool.
Mom and a dad and a kid. It's a sleepover, and they put some
Yeah.
movies on, or they play ping pong, or whatever, play some games or something like that.
Yeah.
Have a meal, and we have a nice comfy bed for you. And I mean, it can be a fun thing to do as a family.
Right.
Kind of a fun little overnight thing, and you're still serving.
Exactly.
So yeah,
There's lots of ways.
Lots of ways.
If someone has questions, where can they contact you?
Oh, always. You can text me. You can email me. You can call us. You can catch us at church. I mean, we're always around and accessible. And if I don't know the answer, I'll find out. So we put up our sign-ups go out usually about 2 weeks before we serve, just to give everybody a heads up and to let them get filled in. We have a very a devout group of volunteers that we can call on if we're in a lurch, and they kind of hang back in the background and try to let other people sign up, but they always step up if we have gaps in the schedule.
Right.
Or the other thing is, if you're not sure, you can always partner up with somebody who's been doing it for a while. That's a lot of times somebody will drag a friend along and say, hey, come hang out with me for the night, and then that person will start serving.
Oh, neat.
So it's a good way to get other friends and family members involved. So.
And when is our next family promise?
Oh gosh, we're coming up in July. I'd have to look at my calendar. It's the second week of July.
Okay.
We're hoping to have families. So Family Promise has gone through a huge revamp. We lost some set staff that are at the day center. The director position is being filled actively right now. We have a brand new social worker who's those are actually employees of Family Promise, and they man the day center. It's really just a 2-person operation. It's the director and the social worker, and usually a secretary, but that they're working on that position too. And they just started screening families back again, because we'd kind of been on a hiatus for a little while with all the changes. So they are in process of interviewing people, and we're hoping to have some families in the program by our rotation.
That's awesome.
So
that's really awesome. Well, it's very obvious that you and Dan have a servant heart, and that you are most definitely passing that down to your kids and showing them. Yeah. So I think it was awesome to have you on the podcast today, because we learned so much and so many different things. So thank you very much for being here.
Glad to do it.
Thank you guys so much for watching the Unveiled podcast today. Join us next week for our next part to our parenting series. But until then, we'll see you later.